Heavy rain continues to batter the Seoul capital region in the early hours of Thursday morning. This follows the worst rainfall seen in over a century earlier this week, which killed at least 16 people in the capital's central and eastern regions. Parts of Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces are under heavy rain alerts. South Korea and China appear to still have differences on whether Seoul should adopt further US missile defense systems. Beijing continues to oppose the systems. South Korea says its decision will be its own, a calculation of national self-interest. Samsung unveiled its latest gadgets in its Unpacked launch event. These include the 4th generation Galaxy Fold and Flip phones, watches and earbuds. We have the full report and an expert's analysis on what's new, coming right up this hour.
Good morning. Welcome to New Day at Arirang. It's now South Korea's central Chungcheong-do Provinces that are bracing for heavy downpours as a powerful rain front that hit Seoul and its surrounding areas for the last 2 days moves southward.
The country's weather agency expects that over 300 millimeters of rain will hit the Chungcheong-do region over the next several days. And authorities are warning residents to beware of flooding, especially around the Musimcheon stream in Cheongju City. While the rainfall will gradually subside in many parts of the Greater Seoul area, up to 80 millimeters of rain is still expected until Friday morning. The rain comes as the death toll from the latest adverse weather in Seoul, Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces reached 10. Nearly 570 households have been damaged or submerged in Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province. Torrential rain drenched the central region, including Seoul, since earlier this week, and widespread damage to buildings, roads and cars have been reported. The top priority is, of course, helping people and the families affected by the floods. Lee Dae-yeon brings us the updates.
After a disastrous 2 days of rain here in South Korea, recovery efforts are currently underway.
The water in my house is above my ankle. I can't even open the door to one of the rooms because floating furniture is blocking the way.
The nation's military will send around 1,300 troops to Seoul and its surrounding areas to work on restoring areas that suffered heavy damage. They will also pick up flood-damaged household items that have ended up outside.
The military will always be ready to support civilians who have been hit hard by the rain. We hope this aid to be helpful for damaged households.
Local authorities are also visiting certain sites to inspect the extent of the damage and will supply daily necessities to people who were forced to evacuate from their homes. Seoul city government plans to roll out 30 billion Korean won, or around $22.8 million in funding to restore public facilities and provide quarantine equipment for infectious diseases. The record rainfall seen on Monday and Tuesday in the Seoul metropolitan area is believed to be the heaviest in 115 years. Amid 2 days of chaos, the torrential rain caused floods and damaged homes, buildings, subway stations, and vehicles. At least 10 people died due to the adverse conditions, while 6 have been reported missing. In the capital Seoul, around 600 people from over 400 households were forced to evacuate their homes and take shelter in schools and other public facilities. Several subway lines in Seoul, along with riverside parking lots, were closed over safety concerns. Although heavy rain alerts in and around Seoul area have been lifted for now, more rain is expected in the region until Thursday. Meanwhile, the Interior Ministry upgraded its flood damage watch level from alert to the highest serious. Authorities are urging citizens to take extra precautions as the wrath of Mother Nature may not yet be over. Lee Dae-yeon, Arirang News.
Amid the relentless rain and the deaths and damages it has caused, President Yoon chaired response meetings during which he apologized to members of the public and ordered fundamental response measures in this abnormal weather that we're experiencing. The ruling People Power Party and government officials also held talks to support such efforts. Kim Bo-kyung tells us more.
Regarding the heavy downpours that triggered massive flooding and damage in South Korea this week, President Yoon on Wednesday apologized to the public.
희생자의 명복을 빌며 불편을 겪은 국민들께 정부를 대표해서 죄송한 마음입니다.
Saying that abnormal weather like this could happen again in the future, Yoon called for fundamental plans to be put in place, saying that there should be no delay in coming up with new measures, but also that restoration and support should also be carried out right away. Mentioning his visit to Gwanakgu district in Seoul on Tuesday, where the residents of a semi-basement housing unit died, President Yoon called for cutting-edge technology to monitor the levels of the country's waterways and to carry out simulations to test warning systems. Meanwhile, the ruling People Power Party and government have agreed to put damage restoration as their utmost priority by using all available budget and administrative capacity. The government also confirmed its will to review naming affected regions as special disaster zones.
The government should come up with preemptive and comprehensive measures in order to minimize the damage. Restoration sites are in need of equipment such as drainage pumps. The government should swiftly come up with plans to organize restoration equipment.
The government will try its best so that things can go back to how they were before. If necessary, it will also actively review announcing special disaster zones after a prompt investigation of the damage.
Part of other measures include swiftly compensating owners of damaged vehicles and giving financial aid to small business owners who have suffered flood damage. They also agreed on carrying out drainage pumps inspections nationwide using a task force set by both central and local governments. Both the government and ruling party have agreed not only to deal with the aftermath of the torrential rainfall that's believed to have been the heaviest in 115 years, but also aim to better deal with similar downpours in the future. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
South Korea has reported 131,518 new COVID-19 cases as of 9 p.m. Wednesday, exceeding the 100,000 mark for the third consecutive day. While there was a slight drop in infections from the day before, experts warned that the virus is spreading at a very fast pace. They forecast over 200,000 daily cases by late August, following the summer holiday season. Against this backdrop, the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasure Headquarters says they will bolster quarantine measures for infection-vulnerable facilities like nursing homes and other long-term care facilities.
Seoul's foreign ministry has reiterated the country's position on the U.S. anti-missile defense system, THAAD, saying that there's been no official agreement or promise made with China regarding the issue. China, however, claims that the South Korean government had vowed to restrict its THAAD operation. Min Soo-kyun with the details.
South Korea's foreign ministry has expressed discontent over China's latest remarks on THAAD, the U.S. missile defense system. The ministry on Wednesday reiterated South Korea's position, saying THAAD was a means of self-defense against North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. It also stressed that THAAD cannot be a topic of consultation as it's a matter of national security. In fact, the ministry said that if the issue were to be raised constantly, it would become an obstacle to their bilateral ties. The comments come just hours after Beijing claimed that Seoul had officially promised to restrict its THAAD operation. Earlier in the day, a Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson said that the South Korean government had vowed to pursue a three-nose policy, along with a pledge to limit the operation of the THAAD battery that's already in place. The spokesperson also went on to say that the deployment of THAAD in South Korea harmed its security interests.
The US's deployment of THAAD in South Korea clearly undermines China's strategic security interests. China has expressed its concerns to Korea on multiple occasions, and the South Korean government has accordingly made public its commitments to the three-nose, one-limit policy. China attaches importance to this position.
The three-nose policy carried out by South Korea's former administration says no to deploying additional THAAD anti-missile system in Korea, no to participating in the US-led missile defense network, and no to taking part in the trilateral military alliance with the US and Japan. China wants the current Yoon administration to stay committed to the policy, but the South Korean government says it was never a formal agreement or promise made between the two. The latest remarks from both sides show signs of a diplomatic row brewing between the countries just a day after the top diplomats of South Korea and China held bilateral talks. Min Soo-kyun, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics has made another advancement in the race to perfect smartphones with folding screens. In its attempt to bring foldable smartphones into the mainstream, the South Korean tech giant unveiled its latest 4th-generation Galaxy Z Flip and Fold. Ji-young has more.
The most durable and most powerful Galaxy Foldables yet. This is how Samsung Electronics is describing its latest line of Galaxy folding smartphones. At its annual Unpacked event on Thursday Korea time, Samsung unveiled its 4th-generation Galaxy Flip and Fold series, wooing buyers around the world. A representative says its new offerings will push foldables from their current position in a niche part of the smartphone market to being a mainstream hit.
Last year alone, almost 10 million people opened a foldable. Market growth has tripled. Just 3 years ago, this category did not even exist. Now we are leading it into the mainstream. Today, we are proud to introduce the 4th generation of Samsung Galaxy Foldables, the best we have ever created.
Users of the latest Galaxy Z Flip 4, a small shell-like square that opens up to a 6.7-inch screen, will be able to make calls and reply to texts without opening the phone and will be able to take selfies in portrait mode. Also, the device has gotten even slimmer.
It has more solid modeling, a smaller hinge, and bolder camera housing compared to previous models. And it has an aesthetic contrast between the matte back glass and the glossier metal frame, which makes it especially stylish.
It also brings higher quality photos and videos with upgraded cameras and a sensor that is 65% brighter than its predecessor. On top of that, it comes with a bigger battery and super fast charging, powering the phone's battery to 50% in 30 minutes. Another highlight of the Unpacked event, the new Galaxy Z Fold 4, a tablet-like smartphone that opens like a book, which has also gotten lighter with a slimmer hinge. It comes with a 45% more durable main display, upgraded cameras both on the back and under the display.
Underneath this immersive display, we're bringing you an improved under-display camera with advanced image processing technology. This camera comes inside a phone that offers more flexibility, an enhanced multitasking experience, and an absolutely amazing screen.
With all these new features and despite soaring costs of production and shipping, Samsung has managed to keep price tags steady at the same levels as last year. Retail prices start at $999 for the Galaxy Z Flip 4 and $1,799 for the Galaxy Z Fold 4. And Samsung's latest products can already be pre-ordered from the company's webpage, with shipping starting from August 26th in selected countries. Ji-young, Arirang News.
It's time for On Point, where we speak to experts to delve deeper into some of the key issues in the spotlight right now. As you just saw last night at the Samsung Electronics Galaxy Unpacked event, new versions of the Galaxy Fold and Galaxy Flip, excuse the pun, were unfolded.
Oh, well, with that pun, claiming that nearly 10 million foldables were shipped in 2021, Samsung Electronics is trying to get a stronger grip on this niche market. So how do the new versions of the Galaxy Flip and Fold look? And does the new model hold up to its predecessor's legacy? To discuss the latest models and more, we have Choi Jae-bong, the Chair Professor at Service Design Department of Sungkyunkwan University, joining us today. Very good morning to you, Professor.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning to you. And well, first of all, we have many questions, but first of all, could you explain to us what improvements have been made to the latest Flip and Fold models?
Yeah, you see, I'm a Z Fold 3 user, so I'm very much satisfied with this product and also excited about the new version. So I watched the Unpacked event last night. It was amazing. So let me start with Z Fold 4. The best thing happened in Z Fold 4 is now more handy to carry. The new one is lighter and thinner, so it's easy to keep in the pocket. There were complaints on heavy weight, and it's improved, I believe. Also, the screen is now bigger by reducing the bezel size, and also they increase the width. It's nice for me. When I fold it, outside screen was too narrow to work with. But now they say it's almost the same size with bar type smartphone. It should provide better experience for multitasking, gaming, and video watching and editing. So, for example, when you watch TikTok shorts with half screen, you can put mention in the other half. It's easy. It also provides S Pen as well. The camera has improved. Samsung put the best camera at this time, just like as S22. It was a little bit disappointing in Z Fold 3. I believe the best improvement is AP. It's called 4 nanometer Snapdragon 8 Plus Generation 1, the top of line AP ever. It's been even upgraded from S22. It provides 10% higher performance with 30% lower battery consumption compared to S22. It sounds really nice because we can enjoy more games and video without recharging it. Now, let me talk about the Z Flip 4. It's beloved by people by beautiful design and handy size, but many people complained about the small battery size. So this time the battery size is increased by 12%, and also super fast high-speed recharging technology is applied. So they say 50% of battery can be recharged within half an hour. The camera is also improved, especially for selfie. Samsung also say that the design is much improved by changing hinge mechanism. I'm eager to watch the new one. The best improvement for Z Flip 4 is also AP, I believe. The same 4 nanometer Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 AP is applied, so people can enjoy more performance with more time. In conclusion, Z Fold 4 and Z Flip 4 have been much improved technically. I think Samsung focused on the voice of customers and endeavored to provide a better experience to users.
Right.
They expected to sell 15 million units. I believe, I hope they reach the goal. Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm a Z Flip 3 user as well, and I saw some improvements, like you mentioned. There, I feel like some of them have been addressed. But let's talk about the technology behind it in general. Like, many people question the phone's hinge, saying it may get in the way of using the phone due to the line across the middle of the screen. That line seems to be getting smaller, and the screen seems to be getting bigger. So what is the secret behind these displays being able to fold? Not many other companies seem to be able to do it.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult technology. So, and the display screen is OLED, it's not LCD. Samsung display holds the best OLED technology for smartphone right now. And OLED is more suitable for smartphone, but not easy to make. The bar type is not even easy. And it should be folded for like more than 100,000 times. Samsung actually has that technology. Samsung display provided 94% of foldable phone display units last year. It means that Samsung display is monopolizing the market with untraceable technology. And the real secret is the hinge. Yeah, hinge. When the folded area, there is wrinkle inside, right? So people don't like it. So the there must be appropriate round to prevent a wrinkle. If the radius is bigger, then there won't be a wrinkle. But in that case, the thickness will increase. So it's very difficult to find optimal size and mechanism.
Exactly, and well, to be honest, Samsung faces a lot of competition in the global market. There are other competitors trying out foldables and all sorts of innovative designs and technologies, of course. So how well is Samsung going to really do in terms of competing? I mean, let's face it, it's expensive. So can the Fold and Flip really appeal to the global market at this point?
Oh, yeah. Well, Chinese companies like Xiaomi and Motorola, they are trying to challenge it. Especially Xiaomi and Motorola, these Chinese companies also unpacked foldable phones this week. But until now, they were not successful in the global market. But I can say that foldable phones are becoming popular, and so they will come to the better. I think it's good news for Samsung because Samsung is still dominating the market now, so it's more important to increase the market size with competing companies right now. Apple is not considering yet. I think Apple is not satisfied with Chinese companies' technology, not yet. So then Apple should ask to Samsung to provide phone parts. I don't think Apple likes it. So no. Apple is not considering yet. Yeah.
Right, well, again, very competitive market. And Samsung, of course, is, as always, trying to streak ahead. But this is where we'll have to end the interview today, Professor, I'm afraid, due to time constraints. But thank you so much for being with us, and have a good rest of your day, and enjoy the new release, I suppose.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that wraps up the first half of New Day at Arirang, but stick around because coming up in the second half,
we dig deeper into the recent foreign ministers meeting between South Korea and China. Why is the THAAD disagreement surfacing right after the meeting that seemed to have wrapped up positively, and also the thin line South Korea is treading as it balances out diplomatic ties between the US and China? We have experts for these questions, so do stay tuned, don't go anywhere.
Share South Korea's experience in tackling COVID-19 and introduce a Korean New Day. A Korean survivor of Japan's wartime slavery met with
extraordinary climate crisis and pledged to work with the EU to tackle the challenge.
The objective of its North Korea policy is
protesters gathering across the country to peacefully demand an end to hate and violence.
Arirang, what matters?
So good right now. Maybe I had a drink or two, but this somehow feels like it's forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Maybe this is forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Forever.
Welcome back to New Day at Arirang. US consumer prices stayed the same in July thanks to falling energy and gasoline prices, bringing the country's annual inflation down slightly from a 40-year peak.
The U.S. Labor Department announced on Wednesday that the Consumer Price Index, which measures what consumers pay for goods and services, has risen by a weaker than expected 8.5% in July from the same month last year. In June, prices were up 9.1% from a year ago, marking the fastest pace of inflation since November 1981. The biggest culprit was gasoline. The prices at the pump fell about $1 from their record highs earlier this year of over $5 per gallon. Eyes are also on how the Fed will go about its coming rate hikes, as Wednesday's numbers were the first positive reading on inflation since the Fed began raising rates in March. Prices in the U.S. have been surging due to global supply chain disruptions, the COVID-19 pandemic, and Russia's war in Ukraine. The Pentagon says the U.S. may move more troops to Baltic nations if needed to defend the region against any possible threat posed by Russia. Speaking at a press conference with his Latvian counterpart, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin also explained that Washington will conduct more military drills with Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Austin, who is on a 2-day visit to Latvia, is America's first defense secretary to visit the country in nearly 3 decades. During the visit, he repeatedly emphasized that the U.S. is committed to helping countries in the region defend themselves.
It's now time for Global Insight, where we speak to experts from around the world on issues making headlines. South Korean Foreign Minister Park Jin met with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi during Park's trip to Qingdao earlier this week. The talks between the two foreign ministers stretched on for 5 hours, 2 hours longer than expected, quite understandably, as they had a lot of sensitive issues to discuss. First being South Korea's recent decision to participate in a US-led semiconductor cooperation, the question of deploying more US missile defense systems to South Korea, as well as North Korea and other regional security issues. A day after the meeting took place, both sides had different versions of how the talks went. Chinese media reported that Seoul had agreed on retaining the previous government's position to reject additional US anti-missile systems, or THAAD, but this was frowned upon by South Korea's foreign ministry. To unpack what was being discussed and how this meeting really set the tone for the future of Seoul-Beijing relations, we turn to Woo Jung-yup, research fellow at the Sejong Institute. We also connect with Jin Kai, non-resident scholar at the Seger Center for Asian Studies at George Washington University. Very warm welcome to you both. Thank you so much for joining us today. Well, my first question to you, Dr. Woo. Now, before and after the talks, there seem to have been some areas of disagreement, and of course I'm talking about THAAD. And while all states, of course, they seek survival and security beyond anything else. And in line with this, our Foreign Minister, Park Jin, he emphasized that South Korea will act in its self-interest. And his Chinese counterpart urged him to retain independence and self-reliance. So with those differences there, first of all, what does the Yoon administration really prioritize as its key areas of self-interest?
So South Korean government under Yoon administration has reaffirmed that there was no agreement between South Korea and China with regard to the THAAD deployment. So now it has to be cleared by the officials from the Moon administration whether there was agreement or not. So far, the Moon administration has reiterated that there was no agreement between South Korea and China with regard to so-called 3 no's. So Yoon administration, by Park Jin's statement yesterday, that there was no agreement between South Korea and China on that regard. So I believe that South Korea is going to continue to keep that position because it's South Korea's sovereign decision to defend South Korea's territorial integrity from North Korea's possible provocations and possible use of the nuclear weapons.
And how does that reflect, Dr. Woo, in South Korea's relations with the US and China under the Yoon government?
I believe that the continuation of this discussion or debates would not benefit anyone, either one between South Korea and China, because it's deployed and it's only for the self-defense of South Korea's territory from North Korea's possible nuclear attack. And China has been in the UN Security Council to sanction North Korea's illegal and unjustifiable nuclear program. So as long as North Korea threatens South Korea's security, it justifies all the measures that South Korea has taken and is going to take. So I really don't believe that this will cause much problem between Korea and China.
And now, Dr. Jin, well, what did you make of this 5-hour-long meeting of the foreign ministers? How do you think that really set the tone for Seoul-Beijing relations?
First, I think the timing of this visit is of great interest. I think a series of events from the background of this event this visit, like the 30th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and South Korea, and a relatively new and the so-called conservative government in South Korea, and of course, the increasing tension between China and the United States, and also tension between Beijing and Tokyo as well. So as we know, Beijing canceled the Sino-Japanese foreign ministerial talks just a few days ago. So again, it's this complex background. I think the primary purposes of Park Jin-'s visit to China will be first to ease tensions, second to clear some uncertainties or suspicions, and third to seek more consensus. First, since the situation in East Asia has been volatile and tense in recent months, for example, the new South Korean government has taken serious steps to enhance its cooperation with the United States and NATO as well. And this has caused an alarm in Beijing, naturally. And so the visit of Park Jin may first ease the tension between China and South Korea to a certain degree, in my view. And second, I think on the issues such as the deployment of that system, the semiconductor supply chain, and the strengthening of the Iran-US alliance, Park Jin-'s visit also is an attempt to at least partially clear up China's concerns or suspicions. For example, as Dr. also mentioned, by emphasizing that these moves are in South Korea's self-interest and are not targeting and or stimulating China. And third, I think, 2022 marks the 30th anniversary of the diplomatic relations between China and South Korea, and how to advance China and South Korean relations in the future. I think this visit can also help both sides, Seoul and Beijing, to reach probably more consensus, for example, on culture and personnel exchanges, economic and technological cooperation, and of course, most importantly, the collaboration in the Korean Peninsula issues.
Also, reaching this landmark in their diplomatic relations, their 30-year anniversary this year. It's been rather concerning for Beijing, of course, as it sees South Korea increasing engagements with Tokyo and Washington. So how has the Chinese government really been perceiving this, and how do you think it's going to react to the semiconductor cooperation between South Korea, the US and Japan and Taiwan, of course, as well as the deeper economic cooperation that they're seeking among the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework members?
Thank you. This is a very good question. First, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi made a very important point that China-South Korean relations should be free from outside interference. So I guess Wang Yi's proposition may best answer this question precisely. But in my personal view, I think China certainly does not interfere in the internal affairs of other countries, including South Korea. The problem is that, for example, if the relations or trilateral relations between South Korea, Japan, and the United States are utilized as alliance tools against China for maybe geopolitical or ideological purposes, it will naturally cause an alarm on the Chinese side. As many Chinese believe that this is the 21st century and we should not be holding on to a Cold War mentality in dealing with international relations. As to South Korea's membership in the Chip-4 Alliance and IPEF, I believe the South Korean government needs to use what I call sophisticated diplomatic skills to deal with these issues. We know that the Biden administration has requested South Korea to closely cooperate with the U.S. strategic realignment actions, namely to contain or crowd out China. So let's suppose and hope South Korea may have enough room for a detour in the mechanisms like Chip-4 or IPEF to avoid which is very necessary, directly targeting or stimulating China. So in that case, well, I think the Chinese officials will be willing to boost, enhance Sino-South Korean economic and maybe technological cooperation. As we know, after all, the Chinese is about to be the world's largest semiconductor consumer market in the next few years. It's coming. So even if South Korea joins the Chip4 alliance and plays a certain role, I still think and I believe the Chinese market is just something that the South Koreans cannot ignore.
Dr. Wu, I want to draw you into the conversation here. Now, South Korea, of course, it's chosen to take part in the US-led semiconductor initiative, which brings together America's major chip-producing allies. And, well, despite its complaints, though, it seems that China doesn't seem to have much of a choice but to accept this decision, because Chinese chip makers also depend heavily on Korean semiconductors at the moment. So with this situation, would you say that China is perhaps losing its diplomatic leverage?
So South Korea is taking part in Fab 4, which is now known as a Chip 4 in South Korea, is not about isolating China from the semiconductor industry. It is more of promoting the co-R&D and the securing the supply chains. It's not about isolating or excluding China from the global supply chain of semiconductors. As Dr. Jin Kai just mentioned, that China has been the biggest market of semiconductor industries, not only for South Korea, but also for Taiwan, and also for Netherlands and Japan, which has strengths in exporting devices. So I think that the joining Fab 4 is not a bigger matter for China, because South Korea and Taiwan still wants to export a lot of its semiconductors to China. For the United States, it has already the tools to protect its technology to China. So for example, in 2018, export ban to ZTE, 2019, export ban to Huawei. United States does not need a Fab 4 to protect semiconductor industry or isolate China from semiconductor global supply chain. So the Fab 4 is not about isolating China from the global supply chain. So we want to have more discussions with the United States and the relevant countries about how to promote the semiconductor industries and how to advance technologies among the countries which has strengths in fabrication in the semiconductor industries. So I believe it's not about whether China has the tools to affect this decision or not. It's more about friendly promotion of the semiconductor industries among the countries that has strengths in fabrications.
And Dr. Wu, well, with the government's foreign policy, of course, also being answerable to the Korean public, would you say that Korean public sentiment is in line with the Yoon administration's general approach to China?
It is true that there was growing anti-China sentiment in public, but it does not necessarily mean that Yoon administration is reflecting public's view on China. It is important to know that Yoon administration, it wants to have good relations both with the United States and China, because it's very vital interest, because in the vital interest of South Korea. So it is true that public has negative view on China, so such as that the meeting between Park Jin and Wang Yi took place in Qingdao, not in Beijing. Chinese government has the official reason of COVID quarantine, but Indonesian president just visited Beijing to have a meeting with President Xi Jinping. So you can see the differences here. And also, like Ambassador Chungcheong has to put in quarantine for 10 days before he came to Beijing. So all of these episodes gave negative perception on Korean public. So I think it's important to know for both South Korean government and Chinese government, there are a lot of areas that two governments need to put much efforts to improve the understanding of each other and to improve the views among the publics toward each other.
Well, another question for you, Dr. Lee, now. In regards to the very sensitive THAAD topic at the moment, well, part of the reason that South Korea decided to adopt the US anti-missile defense system in 2016 was because when North Korea was acting up, it was launching its nuclear test, flurry of missile provocations, as well as a satellite launch. China didn't pick up the phone when then President Park Geun-hye called for help. So in regards to that and what the situation is now with tensions rising on the Korean Peninsula as well, how do you think, in what ways do you think Seoul and Washington will want Beijing to cooperate on handling the North? And do you think that placing additional THAAD systems is looking likely at the moment?
So the concerns raised in both Washington and Seoul is that with a series of missile tests by North Korea this year, there was no consensus made at the UN Security Council because China and Russia has not supported the position by the Washington and Seoul. So in 2016 and 17, China has been very supportive of UN Security Council decision to put sanctions on DPRK on its nuclear programs. But with the different attitudes now at the UN Security Council, it will be very difficult for international community to have a cohesive voice on North Korea's nuclear programs. So that's one thing. And with regard to the THAAD, it is South Korea's sovereign decision to protect South Korea's territorial integrity from North Korea's possible use of its nuclear and missile technology. However, Yoon administration is not currently planning to have another THAAD deployment onto Korean Peninsula in South Korea's territory. Whether it's USFK deployment or whether it's South Korea's purchase of another THAAD battery onto Korean Peninsula, it's not currently being discussed. So I believe that it is true South Korea needs to enhance its missile defense system against North Korea's missile capability, but it's not the THAAD system specifically at this juncture in Korean government.
I'm afraid due to time, this is unfortunately where we have to end the conversation. But thank you very much to Woo Jung-yup Research Fellow at the Sejong Institute and Dr. Jung Kai, non-resident scholar at the Seoul Center for Asian Studies at George Washington University. Thank you so much for your insights this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yesterday, South Korea's capital, Seoul, launched a new summer festival. Starting this year, it will take place every August and will feature a variety of cultural activities to attract both the domestic and international audience. Our Song Yoo-jin went out on the day to file this report.
Welcome to Seoul Festa 2022. Hosted by the Seoul city government, the festival, first launched this year, welcomes guests from all around the world for some summer fun. But on top of providing fun, the city had its sights on a bigger cause.
The tourism industry has been going through a tough time due to the COVID-19 pandemic, so we prepared Seoul Festa 2022 with the hope that this could not only boost the tourism industry, but Seoul City's economy as a whole.
And the first day was filled with eye-pleasing spectacles. First stop was the exhibition area, providing a sneak peek of what transportation in the future will look like. On display were a variety of personal air vehicles that could someday become a familiar sight on the city's skyline. There was also a VR zone where visitors could feel as if they were riding in one themselves. Seoul aims to commercialize an urban air mobility service which would allow passengers to take to the sky in these vehicles by 2025. But the highlight of the day was the evening's K-pop concert, Super K-pop Live. Around 40,000 fans from all around the world gathered at Chungcheong Sports Complex to cheer for their favorite artists.
I was really disappointed when NCT Dream's last concert was cancelled, so I'm really happy to finally see them today at Seoul Festa 2022.
I'm super excited. We haven't gotten to see them for quite a while between, COVID and touring and stuff like that, so I'm really excited to support the group.
So excited. This is all I've been looking forward to lately.
The 2-hour-long performance featured more than a dozen renowned singers or groups from different genres. Crossover vocal quartet Forestella was the first to take the stage. K-pop idol groups including LE SSERAFIM, NMIXX, Stray Kids, and NCT Dream followed. Singer and actor Rhine, rappers Tiger JK and Yoon were also part of the lineup. Although it rained, the bad weather couldn't dampen the passion of the artists and the audience.
But these are only part of the fun that Seoul Festa 2022 offers. From Wednesday to Sunday, a wide variety of activities will take place across the city. They include the Global Electric Car Race, the Formula E World Championship, the World DJ Festival, as well as shopping and leisure activities. Those interested can find more information on the Festa's official website. 송유진, Arirang News.
For a look at news from around the world, we now turn to our Matthew Ashley standing by at the Arirang newsroom. Good morning.
Good morning to you guys.
Let's start in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where there's been an attack on a prison.
Right, Doyon. So dozens of armed militants actually attacked a prison in the city of Butembo on Wednesday and freed over 800 prisoners. Now, 5 people were killed in the jailbreak, including 2 police officers. Local authorities say at least 80 individuals stormed the prison during a prisoner transfer, leaving only 58 inmates of the original 874 behind. A spokesperson for the DRC army blamed a militant group called the Allied Democratic Forces for the attack, saying that the rebels struck after learning female prisoners affiliated with them would be transferred. The armed group has been active in eastern Congo since the 1990s and is known to have ties to Islamic State. It's also responsible for a number of massacres and previously staged a prison break in 2020, freeing over 1,300 inmates. Now, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has reshuffled his cabinet amid falling approval ratings and ties to the Unification Church. A new cabinet was introduced on Wednesday, replacing 14 of the 20 members. This follows polling showing that the previous cabinet's approval rating had dropped as low as 46%. It also comes as Kishida attempts to distance his administration from the controversial Unification Church. Several of the previous cabinet members had ties to the church, which had been connected to fraudulent activities. This reshuffle is the second in only 10 months since Kishida was sworn in. Now, commenting on the move, the PM said all new cabinet members have agreed to have any links to the church reviewed and will help victims of fraudulent religious organizations. And finally, a drought in Germany looks set to make the Rhine River unusable for supply boats. German water and shipping authorities have predicted that by Friday, water levels at a key section of the waterway will drop below 40 centimeters. That would be too low for barges carrying coal and oil upriver. This will impact Germany's ability to fuel its power plants at a time when gas supplies are being squeezed by Russia. Barges have already needed to cut cargo loads by up to 50% to pass through shallow sections. Germany faced a similar situation in 2018 when Rhine water levels hit a record low of 25 centimeters.
Good morning. It looks like another rough morning commute for those in central regions and Jeollado provinces. Slow-moving massive rain clouds are dropping heavy rain of 40 millimeters an hour to parts of Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do this morning. And until tomorrow morning, northern Chungcheong-do Province could see 150 millimeters with a heavy rain warning in place. South and surrounding regions could receive up to 80 millimeters. Well, two extreme and contrasting weather conditions in Korea now. Record-breaking downpours in central regions with extreme heat further south. In fact, Jeju Island saw the highest temperatures in 99 years, topping out at 37.5 degrees Celsius yesterday. Jeju City has had more than 40 tropical nights so far this season. And it's very likely Jeju could have a record-breaking number of tropical nights this summer. And central regions had a cooler side along with rain overnight. This afternoon, Seoul and Gwangju will be topping out at 28 degrees, Jeju sweltering at 35. With that, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
That wraps up our newscast for this hour. We'll be back tomorrow for our Friday's edition of New Day at Arirang.
Thank you for joining us this morning, and do tune in to Arirang News for updates throughout the day. Have a lovely day or evening wherever you are. Goodbye.